Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Richard Sachs, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Rio Grande and Rio Grande Community College in beautiful southeastern Ohio. And this afternoon on my show, I am pleased to have Jennifer Case, who's an undergraduate communication major here, a member of the honors program as well, who studied in China last year. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Good to be here.
Okay. Jenny, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you went to Vinton County High School, and I think you live in the McArthur area, but tell us about your background and what you did before you came to Rio Grande.
Okay. As you said, I'm from McArthur, Ohio. I live in a small town called Vinton County. It's a very, very small area, and there's not much to do around there.
Yep, it's on. Sorry. Okay. And I know you're a communication major here, and you are completing the Chinese Studies minor. So tell us about, first of all, traveling to China, because when I fly to the West Coast, it is so painful for me to be in a plane for 4 or 5 hours. So tell us about your flight over, tell us about the university you were at, the town, and also the fascinating residential situation, because in America we have individual dormitories. It sounded like you were at a dormitory area that had students from around the world. But start us with your flight over and things like that.
Okay, to start off with, flying to China was only my second flight I've ever done before.
Oh,
the first one was to Chicago, so it was a very, very big difference. On my way there, every single person I talked to, I spoke Chinese and I could not ask for any help. It got to the point where I had just landed in Beijing and we had an hour delay from Detroit due to snow. And I had a new flight. Apparently I wasn't on the same flight I was originally supposed to go to. So I waited in line for that airline and wasn't in the right one, so they told me to go to the other one. Well, I waited in line, then they couldn't find me in the system, and I was really worried because I'm in Beijing. I can't, none of my my international plan was not working. My WeChat.
So your cell phone wasn't working at all? Wow.
Couldn't contact anybody for help or anything.
Wow.
My translation apps weren't working. They wanted me to go to the third floor to find the duty manager. And, I couldn't ask anyone how to get there. So I finally made my way up there, and this girl saw that I was very stressed, came over to me, helped me, spoke in perfect English, helped me find the duty manager, waited until everything was, ready and set. And I thanked her and she left. And then I couldn't find my actual flight because it wasn't showing up on the screen, and a random stranger just happened to go by and said that he was on the same flight. He told me to come over with him. He let me use his phone to contact Eric Yang, the director of it, and contact my friends to say, hey, I'm going to be late. And then he was on the same flight as me, so he had someone switch seats with me so we could sit together. He only had a carry-on bag, and I had to check in and a carry-on, so he helped me find the baggage and then wait on my friends.
Okay.
And then, on the way back, now that I actually knew Chinese, how to ask for help.
Sure.
Every single person I talked to spoke English.
Oh, what do you know? Because Americans hear that so much. We're told, oh, everybody knows English. And then you go into certain parts of the world and they don't know English, and it's so good for you to know English. So so you get to the area, so you flew into Beijing, and then it was another 2 hours or so to Hangzhou?
Yeah, I flew into Beijing, and I had a 2 hour and 25-minute flight to Hangzhou.
Okay. And I know I sent a map of China to Mike, but we didn't talk about it before the show, but so we'll just go forward with that. So tell us about the living situation, and you call it ZUMC? So can you tell the audience about what that means?
ZUMC stands for Zhejiang University of Media and Communications. The Chinese name of the school is called Zhejiang Chuanmei.
Okay.
So that's what the name is.
Yeah, and then the housing situation, you said some students were really conscientious, others never went to class. So tell us about some of the countries where the students you lived with were from, and some of those interactions that you had.
Well, I lived in the International Building, and most of it consisted of, people from different countries and the postgraduate students from the university. So the boys were on the lower level, the girls were on the next highest, and then all the other international students were further up.
So again, you're in an international dorm. You
Yes.
said international and graduate students, and you said there was a big difference between the undergraduate Chinese dorms and the international dorms. Yours were nicer.
Yes, I had a room all to myself. I actually had 2 beds in my room, 2 closets, which I didn't need, and a restroom to myself.
Okay.
So it was really, at first I wanted a roommate, but after living there for a while, I was really happy to have the extra privacy.
Oh, sure, sure.
But it was nice that everyone was still within walking distance. My neighbor is from Turkey, so I would often go over to his room and ask for homework help because he was a higher up.
Okay.
So it was, yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of attendance, now in American universities, because of financial aid and federal government requirements, we have to do reporting of attendance generally at the 15th day of each term. But you told me a lot of the international students you were with didn't even go to class?
Yes. Technically, it's the same way there. They're actually even more strict
really?
on that, yes.
Because European universities aren't. I've heard at British universities, you show up for lectures, but they don't take attendance, and then you take a test, and that's it. But at Chinese universities, they do expect attendance.
Yes, especially the teachers that I had.
Okay.
Personally, they were very strict on you making sure you come to your class because you're not going to learn if you don't go to your class. I had a few classmates who often wouldn't go to the classes, and some of the times the teachers would mix them up, or they would ask what their name is. When they would walk out of the room, they would ask me.
Yeah.
So sometimes, yeah, some of my classmates didn't show up to class.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I've taught Jenny in 2 classes, and she's an extraordinary student, and I've always thought she'd make a good teacher, but she's a communication major and not seeking any teaching certification. She's got a Chinese minor and an English minor. However, you taught while you were over there. We've got some
Yeah.
wonderful pictures. Tell us how that came about.
It was probably a month before I was actually supposed to leave. I received a message on WeChat, which WeChat is it's kind of like Facebook type of
In
thing
China?
that they use to communicate. That you could post pictures, videos, you can call, FaceTime, message, that kind of thing. I received a message from Cecilia, who is a member of the international department, who we would ask for help. And she said, would you like an extra learning opportunity, not only to better your Chinese, but also to, gain a new experience? And they asked me if I wanted to teach. And originally, I actually thought I was like an assistant teacher because I didn't have an education background. And I showed up to class, and they're like, no, you're teaching. So I had to figure out all of that. But
Are we able to put those pictures up? Because if not, here we go. Okay, so this is not teaching yet. This is the festival, right? The comic book festival or whatever?
yes.
Okay, so tell us about this.
Also, while my time there, I got asked to be an ambassador for the 14th Animation Festival in China. And they randomly came up to me and asked me if I wanted to wear this kimono for the ceremony. So some of us got to dress up, and they actually let me keep that kimono. It is at my house currently.
Really?
Yeah.
So
They didn't
is
let me
that
keep the sword,
cotton
though.
or silk or what?
It's more silky.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. How cool is that?
So and it's really pretty in person.
Now, I know Japan and South Korea and Taiwan are crazy about comic books. China the same way?
Yes.
Okay.
That's mainly
What do
what
you
the
know?
whole festival was.
Okay.
The ceremony actually was in favor of the Monkey King, which is
Okay. Oh, sure.
really,
Yeah.
really big cartoon and animation in China.
Chinese folklore.
Yes.
The monkey story goes back thousands of years in Chinese folklore. Great.
Yes,
Okay.
so they were kind of mainly celebrating that. And this is the ceremony that they held. So there's 10 of us representing 10 different countries. And I got to be representative of America. So it was a very, very well put together ceremony, and everyone was very patient and gracious.
Great, great. We can move on to the teaching pictures too. So this is the school you taught at,
Yes,
right?
I taught at Chunwei Primary School of Tangxiang.
Okay.
I taught 1st grade through 6th grade.
Wow.
And I only got to teach each class one time because there was so many of them. This was my very first day of teaching. This is the 6th grade class. They were absolutely exceptional.
Oh, really?
They truly are. They have, a lot of the students at this school are very, very talented as well. I wish I had sent those as well.
Yeah.
They did an art show when I was there and a music production, and it was just breathtaking.
That classroom looks similar to an American classroom. Of course, there's Chinese characters. There's the Chinese flag I see, but the blackboard, it's just a sliding blackboard. We have those. Apparently that's a chalk blackboard, a slate blackboard. The one student seems to be talking to you. So the context of it seems familiar, but it's in China. And those students are fluent in English or?
No. Typically, most students in China will start learning English in the 1st grade.
1st grade, okay.
In the 1st grade, usually they learn, hi, my name is, the colors, their age, a few hobbies, animals, food. 6th grade, the 6th graders I could hold a more fluent conversation with.
Okay.
They were a bit easier to teach and interact with. And I was able to play, I tried to make my class more fun because I only got to see each of them one time. So typically we would play games to get them comfortable with talking because I heard a lot of the teachers recommended that this is the time when they need a lot of support when learning a new language.
So do all of them go on to 7th grade or just some of them? Is it like a step system, do you know?
You will continue on with, I believe so, you will continue on. I think it's when high school is typically
high school is the cutting off point,
yeah.
I'm sorry, you should put that picture back up. That is an adorable picture. You got to tell us about this.
This was actually on my 21st birthday,
Okay.
and they threw a birthday party for me. But the little boy in the hat right there, his name is Paul, which he was absolutely adorable.
You can kind of tell. You can kind of tell, like he's like the shortstop. He's the short guy who's running everybody else.
He had like the smallest little voice.
Yeah.
Originally, I was just taking a picture with him, and as soon as I sat down to take a picture, they all tackled me. And you can't see it all the way back there, but there's at least like 30 of them back there, so I'm getting pushed.
In all these pictures, their smiles are so wonderful. Look at the young lady right behind you. She is so delighted to just be part of the experience with you.
Which I feel like I need to make this noted. In the area that I was in, Tangxiang, there really aren't that many foreigners in the area. So this is kind of the first time they're seeing anyone that's different from them. So that also kind of helped with the enigma of me.
No,
and,
you're like a movie star to them. Yeah.
Well, they actually would, after classes, they'd want me to sign their English books. So
really?
I felt like a star.
Oh, good.
And one other thing that was a bit different, they're not doing it right now, but typically when I'm talking, or I ask them a question, everyone, instead of raising your hand and sitting in your seat, they stand up to talk to you.
Really? Wow.
So that was something I needed to get used to, especially when the kids were older and taller than me.
Well, that's very old school. That's very old school to do that. When I was a prep school teacher 35 years ago, when anybody came to your table, all the boys were supposed to stand up. And I would tell the boys, remain seated, because I'd see the other basketball coach coming over to talk about this afternoon. And some of the coaches let the boys stand up for 5 minutes while they talked and their food got cold. So this is a classic around the world way to show respect.
Yeah, they would stand the entire time until they were done speaking their answer or their response.
Yeah.
They also, all of them would wear the little red scarves, and that is to represent and let them know that they are elementary students. As you go in age, like junior high and high school, they have their own.
Different colors.
Yeah.
What do you know? Okay.
And I do believe this was first grade. Yeah, first grade right there. But they were so talented and they were so eager to learn.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
every day they wanted to practice as much as they could. When I would take breaks in the teacher's lounge, they would, if the door was closed, they would like push the door open and peek at me.
Oh,
They wouldn't
hilarious.
say anything. Sometimes they would just stare. So it was an experience.
Oh, I'm so glad.
But
for
it was
you.
probably
That's great.
one of the most rewarding experiences I had during my time there.
Wow.
Not only did they learn from me, but I learned from them.
Yeah.
I would speak in English, and after I would speak in English, I would say it in Chinese to help clarify.
Sure.
And they would often, if I said something wrong, they would correct me on it just how I would with their English, and that helped me learn the basics so much.
Oh, that's great.
It helped a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something every teacher learns, that you can be a really good student, and then when you have to teach somebody else, it's such a quantum leap above it, because you have to look metacognitively at the whole thing and see what you need to emphasize for them to learn. You mentioned the internet before and like a Chinese version of Facebook. One thing we hear about in the States are limitations to the internet in China. Did you notice that? Or I mean, I'm not talking
Yes.
about going to websites you shouldn't be going to, but literally they cut off certain things like about democracy and things like that. I've heard that. I don't know if it's true. Did you notice that when you tried to get internet connectivity? Were there like parts of the internet you couldn't get to or sites you couldn't get to because of where you were in the world?
Sometimes, in my experience, and several other people that I knew there, we had VPNs to gain access to
Oh,
sites
I
you
see.
wouldn't typically.
Okay.
But for the most part, I really didn't have that much of a problem
Okay.
with that.
And I know as we've worked in the portfolio class, you told me the soup and dumpling story about when you were lost.
Oh.
I think that's wonderful. And I love hot and sour soup and I love dumplings. So I've always thought it was hot and sour soup, though I don't think you ever told me what it was, but just that it was good. Can you tell us that story? And I think it gives us a sense of how welcome you felt there.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to say I probably would not have made it to China if it wasn't for the help of strangers. But as I've said, the school, so at Zhejiang Chongmei, which is the ZUMC, there's two campuses, the Shasha campus, where there's more foreigners and most people in that area can speak some sort of English. The other campus that I taught at, called Tangxiang, there's no one really speaks English that much. The buses or the subways don't have any English. It's only in Chinese. So Chinese language, they talk in tones. And I was on my way to the elementary. I was on my way back from the elementary. And there's two stops that sound exactly the same, except there's a slight difference in tone. And it was probably my second week there. And I got off at the wrong stop, and in that area, everything kind of looks the same. So I didn't realize I was not where I was supposed to be for like 20 minutes. So I was messaging my friend, and I said, if I send you my location, can you tell me where I am? And she did. It was all in Chinese, so I had to try to figure that out. And she couldn't come help me because she was getting ready to take a test. So as I was walking about, this lady saw that I was like distressed or lost, or I seemed like I was, and I don't know if she was cleaning up or just opening, she invited me in for free soup and free dumplings.
Wow.
And she could speak a little bit of English, so we were able to talk, and I knew a little bit of Chinese at that point to talk. And as I got better at Chinese, I would visit her often.
Oh, really?
And I would try and talk to her a bit more. When it got to the point where neither one of us knew how to say something, we would talk through translation apps.
Okay.
But it was just so interesting and kind of mind-blowing that
Yeah. And Hangzhou is a city of over 1 million people?
Hangzhou is a very big city.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that would have happened in an American city of that size. Maybe a small town, if a lady on the front porch sees somebody like you, but in a big city, Americans wouldn't care about that, I don't think.
Yeah.
And to me, that was such a sweet story. You've learned what seems to me like a lot of Mandarin Chinese. And you mentioned in passing just now talking in tones. And again, at the end of a sentence or a word can be in a rising tone, like an even tone, or a declining tone. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because the same word can mean 2 or 3 different things then?
Yes, it depends on the characters as well. So there's the first tone, which is more like a straight, it's like ma.
Okay.
Second, ma. Third, ma. Fourth, ma. So like they sound very similar, so
Very
you need
similar,
to
yeah.
listen. And so ma could be like mama, which is mother, or ma means horse. So you gotta be a little
Yeah.
bit careful
Right.
when trying to figure out what you're trying to say.
Yeah. So,
And-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And because due to dialects and accents, sometimes even though you're still speaking Mandarin, one Chinese person may not understand another Chinese person due to the dialect or accent. So sometimes, even though even though we were still speaking Mandarin, I couldn't understand what they were saying sometimes. And if it gets to that point, you can't really hold a conversation.
Right.
But
So in American dormitories, students usually purchase a meal plan and eat in the dining center. What was the situation where you were living there? Because first of all, it's like an international area for students from multiple universities, right?
Yeah.
Which we generally don't do in the United States. But how else was it different?
well, it's the same. We had a meal plan as well. I
Okay.
actually didn't use much of my meal plan because due to the difference in currency, it was kind of around the same amount to go out and buy a meal than it would each meal. The setup was a bit difficult because if you didn't know the correct Chinese word for that certain dish you wanted, and they would lay it out like this. And I would say jiga, which means this, or
This.
naga, which means that. And
Jiga, Naga?
yeah, jiga,
Okay,
naga.
I'm ready to go to China now.
And I would be like, jiga, and they'd be like, this one? And I'm like, no, this one.
Okay.
So it was always a bit of confusion.
But still, you're just looking at it, and you can't really tell.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as General Tso's chicken in China, I've heard.
There
Yeah.
might be, I don't know. I
know
didn't
everybody
see any.
says that's an American dish, but General Tso's chicken can be mild, it can be spicy, or it can be way hot. So as you look at something, you can't really
You
tell.
typically can't. Sometimes you could, if it was really red, sometimes you could. But I learned very quickly, because sometimes I was being very adventurous. I would just eat whatever. I would only ask, jiga bulama, which means is this spicy? And if it wasn't spicy, I would eat it.
Oh, okay.
And then be told later what it is.
Because I like spicy but not hot. If it's way hot, I can't take that. But it seems like part of Chinese cooking is for the taste to be so different and so, I guess spicy, I'm looking for a better word than that. Tell us about this picture. So these are the other international students you were with?
Yeah, these are some of them.
They'll probably never see this show, so you can talk trash about any of those people.
I actually made really good friends with all of these. Two of them are
that's
actually
nice.
my teachers.
Okay.
The one in the purple is actually my writing and my reading teacher, and the one right beside me in the blue dress,
Right.
she was my comprehensive teacher.
Okay.
We got to be part of a performance, a cultural performance that the students did at the Tongxiang campus. And I actually got to wear the Han Dynasty clothing. And the girl beside me, that's Patience from Botswana.
Okay.
We both did, they taught us a dance, how to do.
Wow. I was going to say it looks like something a Greek goddess would wear or something,
Yeah,
but this is from...
I loved it. I tried to see if they'd let me take that one home. They did not let me.
Hey, you got the kimono, though.
I did.
And are you praying to Buddha here, or what?
I'm honestly not sure. I cannot remember the actual...
God.
the Chinese name.
Okay.
But a couple of my friends and we went to go pray before some big exams, because that's what they typically will go do. So
Okay.
it was really interesting to do this. I liked this.
There was a Felician sister, a Catholic nun, at my first full-time teaching job, and she used to make fun of students, and she was, wearing a habit, but she would make fun of students who prayed. She'd go, study, don't pray, before you take my exam. But again, prayer cannot hurt, so.
I needed to do both.
Okay, good. And tell us about this picture. You look a little bit cold.
It was freezing and raining that day. This was just a picture at the front of the campus, so that is just saying Zhejiang.
And this was, again, you were there March to July. So this was what we would consider to be a warm part of the year. So this was May or June or something?
Oh, this was, when was this? I'm not honestly sure when this was. It was a little bit after I was there, because the Hangzhou is very, very, very hot.
Okay.
So this must have been later on, I think.
Okay. So, and it was hot and humid a lot of the time?
Very hot.
And you're talking to two people who live in southern Ohio.
It was like
but
the kind of hot, if you go outside, it's hard to breathe hot sometimes.
Oh, okay, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a beautiful place. Tell us about this.
My friend Umet from Turkey, we went to go see the Grand Canal, and this is in the area of the Grand Canal of exploring. So
Okay.
this was, I do believe, the Confucius Temple. I'm not quite sure on that one.
Okay.
When we went, I couldn't read this Chinese very well.
Yeah.
But I was able to meet a lot of different people through
Yeah.
this experience. I met at least 15 different
Yeah.
people from, I met at least, I met people from at least 15 different countries.
Wow. So we're in the last couple seconds of the show. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Are there any other takeaways? I mean, I know it's really changed you for the better in so many ways.
This was something that was really out of my comfort zone. And by doing this, I was able to kind of come out of my shell a lot more, to be a little bit more confident. And of course, it made me want to learn more about different cultures and languages and get out and travel. And make new friendships. I had to relearn how to make friends, so
Yeah.
it was an overall good experience. And I
Yeah.
encourage anyone to go out and travel, and especially go to China. There was a lot of stereotypes I didn't get to mention here today, but there was a lot of stereotypes that are broken when you go there, and
Yeah.
people are just so patient and kind.
That's wonderful. That is such an endorsement for study abroad. I couldn't say it any better. Jennifer Case, thank you so much. It sounds like you had a wonderful term and a wonderful future, I'm sure, ahead of you as well. Thanks very much. Thanks for watching. Goodbye from Rio Grande, Ohio.
谢谢。